I would argue that they have some of the best endgame cards out there. Hey guys, Sebastian from AskSebby. Today we're going to look at 5 reasons why you should consider and probably get American Express cards. A lot of these are going to start relating to travel, so big favor from you guys is to give this a thumbs up because I'm probably going to piss off Team Cashback. Regardless of what side you're on, I do kind of talk about both things, so consider subscribing to the channel. If this topic sounds familiar and this feels like the Twilight Zone, it's because it kind of is. I argued the opposite side a few weeks ago, so if you watch this and you get angry and frustrated with it, then you're probably going to like that video with why you should avoid American Express in the early game. With that said though, let's start off with number 1, and that's the fact that American Express cards have very good earn rates. If you're someone living in a high cost of living city, or if you're someone who just has very high spend, then these cards can move the needle. The gold card is the best example of this. It has 4x back on dining, and if you look at the market of cards that are currently available, most are going to be in that 3x zone. If you eat out a lot, then this can easily be your workhorse. If you're someone doing Fat Fire and you spend $2,600 on dining a month, then obviously this makes a lot of sense. If you're someone spending $200, I would say that you'd probably be better off with some other options. If you are someone who spends a lot on groceries, then the gold card or the blue cash everyday and also the blue cash preferred make a lot of sense. There's a ton of people with families with maybe 2, 3, 4 kids, and I know that they're eating machines. The last one's going to be airlines, and I know we don't think about this one too much, but for the platinum card, you're earning 5x back on airline bookings that are directly with the airline. For anyone who had to jump through hoops in 2020 doing cancellations, dealing with online travel agencies, they know the headache of not doing direct bookings. Okay, cool, but what about annual fees? This leads into number 2, which is the fact that a lot of American Express cards give you credits that help you subsidize those annual fees. The crazy thing is that for some of these cards, if you actually use all the credits and you aren't overvaluing them, then you can actually get more value than the annual fee cost. This is the only thing on my desk right now, but imagine buying $500 worth of coupons for maybe $200. The gold card is a pretty good example of this. You have $240 worth of credits, and if you can reasonably do that and use it anyways, then you're kind of paying only a $10 effective annual fee for a card that earns a lot of points. For a lot of the other issuers, it's a $95 annual fee without any rebates, without any of these credits. It's a trap! The thing to be careful with here is that you're not overvaluing credits that you would otherwise not use. So for my parents who live in suburbia, they don't generally use Uber. They don't really like to use Uber Eats, so it doesn't really make sense for them. Having that Uber credit is more of a pain than something that actually helps them. The Platinum card is an obvious and controversial example. $1,400 in credit for $695 annual fee, so technically it works out, but if you can even use half of it, then you're subsidizing the cost of a lounge. More on the lounge stuff in a second though. My favorite example of cards that pay for themselves is the Hilton Aspire card. So yes, there's a $450 annual fee, but you get a $250 airline incidental credit, you get a $250 Hilton resort credit. So those by themselves kind of outweigh the annual fee already, and you could argue that that's pretty much wiping it off. And then on top of that, you end up getting diamond status, meaning that you don't have to stay a crap ton of nights in order to do that normally, and you get a free weekend certificate night that you can use at almost any of their properties. 2021 is kind of a mess because there's so many people trying to use their certificates, but once it gets back to normal, then you can easily use that for places like the Maldives. A ton of people would happily pay $200 to $500 just for that certificate, and that's actually why people have so many Aspire cards. Side note, if you're someone who wants to learn more about American Express cards and you want to support the channel, we do have links that are on our website, AskSebby.com. Make sure the links are competitive, but otherwise huge way to support the channel. Also, if you're someone new to American Express or you're considering the Platinum card, I'd recommend reading our blog post on how to use Card Match to find an elevated Platinum offer. I would argue that this is your best starting point just because of how targeting works. Card Match link on our website as well if you want to support the channel. This leads into number 3, which is going to be travel perks. Within this, I'd argue that there's 2 parts. The first one being lounge access. If you're someone looking for the cheapest way to get lounge access, I think the Hilton Surpass card is probably going to be the winner. $95 annual fee, downgrade path into a no annual fee Hilton if it doesn't make sense in the second year, and you also can upgrade if you want to play that game, and the fact that you get 10 Priority Pass visits. On top of that, you also get Hilton Gold status, which might be useful depending on your travel needs. If you're looking beyond Priority Pass, I would argue American Express is pretty much the only option right now given the landscape. So you have the Platinum, the Business Platinum, and also the Delta Reserve and Delta Reserve Business. If you are flying internationally, then there are some better options such as Polaris, United, but that means you're flying internationally and also that you're flying business class. If you look at the 10 busiest US airports in 2020, you can see that 8 of the airports have or will have a Centurion lounge. I do agree that Chicago ends up getting the short end of the stick. If you look at 11 to 20, you see 5 more Centurion lounges, and then you have 3 other airports that are Delta hubs, so you get access to Delta Sky Clubs when you fly Delta. At a minimum, I would say a visit is worth between $5 to $10, getting some snacks and a coffee that would otherwise run you probably about the same amount if you went to an airport location. And then if you go on the high end of this, if you're someone treating this as an open bar, then you could easily get $40 to $50 in value. In my experience, airport bars can get pretty expensive. You're looking at $12 to $15 a drink. One of the big complaints in the past is that Centurion lounges do get pretty full, especially during busy times like Thanksgiving. They are trying to improve this though by expanding the lounges that currently exist and then also increasing the annual fee for cards, making it so that some people do cancel them. But what if I'm someone who doesn't really do domestic travel? What if I'm focused on international? There are some other Centurion lounges and they have other partner lounges as well. So if you look into Mexico, if you look into India, Hong Kong, they have a bunch of options. Same thing with Australia. If you're flying to Europe, then Lufthansa has some options as well. So I think it is something that they're trying to improve on. The other interesting thing too is that we're seeing some Priority Pass lounges leave the Priority Pass network, especially Plaza Premium, and a lot of them have direct deals with American Express because when I go there, they give you the option to use either Priority Pass or just American Express. But what if I got micro acquired and I'm looking to fly business class now? This leads into the second part where American Express has some transfer partners that other issuers don't have. Actually, let me make a coffee and build a chart because I think that might be a bit more helpful. This part isn't sponsored, but I just want an excuse to expense coffee. Okay, cool. So if we look at the top left, we can see all the different options and the partners that are available. Count if... I don't think this works, but I did not know you could do formulas with emojis. Okay, so you can tell that American Express has the most even just by looking at it. Most doesn't necessarily mean the best though, so be careful with that. There are some partners that you would want to avoid. American Express has 21, Chase has 14, and Citi has 15. Super quickly going down the list, I would say Air Canada Aeroplan is a pretty good one. ANA is an interesting one. It can be a bit more expensive than Virgin Atlantic, but availability is a lot better and you can also book a bit farther out in advance. And also it's the only option. And if you want to do some advanced things, it might be a bit better as well. Delta is one of those ones I would strongly avoid because the value isn't generally there. I really like Delta. I have elite status with them, but their points don't have the upside that other programs do. Qantas can be interesting if you want to go down under, but it can get pretty expensive as well. Virgin Atlantic's an interesting one because American Express has had transfer promotions in the past, but we haven't really seen them recently, so I'm not sure if they're going to come back, but if it does come back, then this is one of the best use cases. The deeper you get into the travel stuff, the more valuable optionality becomes because you might be looking for last minute availability. And for a lot of people, you typically want to use your Chase points either towards Hyatt and if you do domestic, maybe Southwest, and then you end up using your American Express points to try to fly to that destination. Speaking of Delta as well as Hilton, this leads into number 4, and that's generating status in additional nights for your vacations. American Express is probably the king of let me use my work spend that is subsidized, that is reimbursed in order to generate these points for personal travel. Let's say you run $100,000 worth of ads per month for your agency or for your startup, then great, American Express will happily have you. Maybe you do reselling or anything that involves a lot of inventory, then that's perfect. A lot of these people are selling something for, let's say $100, but it costs them $95 to buy the product, ship it over, do marketing and everything else, so it looks like they have a lot of spend. Outside of American Express, the only card out there that lets you do it at this level and scale would probably be the Chase World of Hyatt card. That's why I'm generally so bullish for that card for people who have businesses and who have that level of spend. Starting with the easiest one, we have the American Express Bonvoy Brilliant, where if you spend $75,000 in a calendar year on the card, then you end up getting platinum status with Bonvoy. This makes you eligible for suite upgrades, and if you are someone traveling to an expensive place where maybe you're stuck on an island, then this gets you free breakfast, which is pretty helpful. Otherwise, you might be paying something like $80 per person per day, and that can get pretty expensive. But why would someone who spends $75,000 a year worry about $80 breakfast? It's because a lot of that spend might be reimbursable. If you're a consultant traveling, if you're buying inventory, it's not really like you're super rich, even though it might look like it is. Next one is going to be the Hilton Surpass and the Surpass Business, where you get a free weekend certificate for your first $15,000 in spend per calendar year on the card. For the Aspire, you do get a night just by having the card, and then you get a second night for spending $60,000 in a calendar year. I probably wouldn't go for that one unless you have super high spend. This is probably getting way too deep in the weeds for a lot of people, so maybe skip ahead to the next point. But Delta is another interesting one because you can actually generate their top level status that is not invite only, so you can generate platinum or diamond status just by spending on their cards. If you end up getting 2 Delta Reserve cards, so let's say a business one and a personal one, and you put $125,000 in spend on each of those cards, then you can generate diamond status. That's definitely a ton of money, and it sounds pretty crazy, but there are some agencies who can spend $100,000 to $500,000 every single month. If you don't care about travel, then this might not be that interesting, but I think it's a good excuse to use your work spend to maybe go take a diving trip. On a note of diving, let me ask you a question. If you were to, let's say, buy a brand new GoPro and it drops off the side of your boat while you're about to go on your first excursion, then do you think you're covered? This leads into number 5, which is that American Express has some of the best insurance-based benefits out there. In the diving situation, they were going diving, it fell off the boat, and that was pretty much $250 that just fell into the ocean. Since they bought it off a card that had purchase protection and the incident happened within that coverage period, then they were covered up to the full amount. All they did was submit a claim and American Express took care of the rest. 5 days later, it was approved and they saw the credit back on their account. If you go on Flyer Talk, you're going to see a bunch of different stories and situations that show you how great that protection can be. An iPod, and this is how you can tell it's from 2013, let's say that broke and chipped, they expected $50 to $60 back for local repair coverage, and American Express ended up covering the whole amount. Depending on the situation, you might have to submit paperwork, but I think it's relatively seamless and painless compared to a lot of the other issuers. For a lot of the other ones, it can feel like pulling teeth. With that said, there are 3 important disclaimers. Number 1 is don't lie, because that's technically insurance fraud and you can go to jail. Number 2 is that you need to buy the item in full with your card, and the incident needs to happen within the coverage period. So depending on what coverage you're relying on, they do have different periods. So it's just something to be careful with. Number 3 is that only certain cards have some of these benefits. So for example, for something like return protection, it's not actually on the green or the gold card. It is on their other high annual fee cards as you would expect, but it's also on cards like the Everyday Preferred, the Blue Cash Preferred, and even the Amazon cards. Again, if you want to learn about American Express cards, we do have links that are on our website, AskSebby.com. Huge way to help the channel, so thank you guys so much for the support. My question for you guys is, of these benefits, how do you think about them? How do you arrange them in your head? Or maybe there's a benefit that I'm missing out on that you think is super valuable. Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and if you know anyone else who might benefit, share this with them. We'll probably help them out, but otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.